Student diversity. You've probably heard someone say, everyone is unique. Though it sounds really like a cliche, one cannot ignore the truth in it. As a facilitator of learning, the teacher is tasked to consider the individual differences among the students in planning for effective instruction. In this lesson, we will be able to identify the different factors that bring about diversity in the classroom, demonstrate a positive attitude towards diversity as an enriching element in the learning environment, and come up with teaching strategies that consider student diversity. Factors that bring about student diversity. In all learning environments, individuals interact with others who are in some ways different from them. This diversity comes from other factors like the following: socioeconomic status, thinking or learning style, and exceptionalities. The millionaire's lifestyle differs from the middle income or lower income group. That is in relation to the socioeconomic status. When you talk about thinking learning style, some of the students may learn better by seeing something, and others by just listening, and still others by manipulating something. And lastly, for exceptionalities, in class, there may be one who has difficulty in spoken language comprehension or in seeing, hearing, etc., which we will discuss further. How student diversity enriches the learning environment. Here are some of the learning opportunities that students' diversity can bring to your classroom. First, students' self-awareness is enhanced by diversity. Exposing students to others with diverse backgrounds will also help the students to focus on their self-awareness. Student diversity contributes to cognitive development. The opportunity to gain access to the perspective of their classmates and to learn from other students rather than the instructor only may be especially important for promoting the cognitive development of the learners. Student diversity in the classroom brings about different points of view and varied approaches to the learning process. It doesn't only focuses on the teacher itself. Number 3. Student diversity prepares learners for their role as responsible members of the society. With student diversity, the classroom becomes a public place where community can be practiced. Number 4, student diversity can promote harmony. When student diversity is integrated into the classroom teaching and learning process, it can be a vehicle for promoting peace and harmonious relationship. What are some tips on student diversity? First, as teacher, we could encourage learners to share their personal history and experiences. We could also learn from them. Second, we could integrate learning experiences and activities which promote students' multicultural and cross-cultural awareness, such as Linggo ng Wika. We may also invite other resource speakers, maybe foreigners or from other ethnic groups to give us an idea about their ethnicity. And we could also ask the students if they have been discriminated because of their racial group. So those are the things that we could integrate in our lessons or in our learning experiences. Third, aside from highlighting diversity, we could identify as well the patterns of unity that transcend group differences. So how could we be united? How could we live harmoniously? That is on the part. Number 4, communicate high expectations to students from all subgroups. So we could make a conscious attempt to call on or draw in students from diverse groups by using effective questioning techniques that reliably elicit student involvement. Fifth, we could use varied instructional methods to accommodate student diversity in learning styles. So we could provide different material for sensory perceptual modalities. We could also diversify instructional formats, like we could use student-centered, we could use teacher-centered, and we could also use procedures that involve both independent and collaborative learning. Vary the examples you use to illustrate concepts in order to provide multiple contexts that are relevant to students from diverse backgrounds. 7. Adapt to the students' diverse backgrounds and learning styles by allowing them personal choice and decision-making opportunities concerning what they will learn and how they will learn it. 8. Diversify your methods of assessing and evaluating students' learning. 9. Purposely form a small discussion groups. 9. Purposely form small discussion groups of students from diverse backgrounds. You can form groups of students with different learning styles, different cultural backgrounds, etc. Learning or thinking styles. Learning or thinking styles refer to the preferred way an individual processes information. There are several perspectives about learning and thinking styles. We shall focus on sensory preferences and global analytic continuum. Sensory preferences refers when individuals tend to gravitate toward one or two types of sensory visual. Sensory preferences when individuals tend to gravitate toward one or two types of sensory input and maintain a dominance in one of the following types. We have the visual learners. Visual learners see their teacher's actions and facial expressions to fully understand the content of the lesson. Richard further breaks down visual learners into visual iconic and visual symbolic. When you talk about visual iconic, these students prefer visual imagery such as film, graphic displays, or pictures in order to solidify learning. They usually have good picture memory or iconic imagery and attend to pictorial detail. They would like to read a map better than to read a book. Visual symbolic are those students who prefer this form of input, feel comfortable with abstract symbolism. They would prefer to read a book than a map and would like to read about things than hear about them. Another type of learner is auditory learners. They will learn best through verbal lectures, discussion, talking things through, and listening to what others have to say. They could interpret the underlying meanings of speech through listening to the tone of voice, pitch, speed, or nuances. Auditory learners also fall into two categories. We have the listeners and the talkers. The listeners most likely do well in school. They remember things said to them and make the information their own. They may even carry on mental conversations and figure out how to extend what they learned by reviewing in their heads what they heard others say. The talkers are the ones who prefer to talk and discuss. They often find themselves talking to those people around them. In a class setting, when the instructor is not asking questions, auditory verbal processors or the talkers tend to whisper comments to themselves. The third sensory preference is the tactile or kinesthetic learners. These people benefit much from hands-on approach. They may find it hard to sit still for long periods. They may not benefit so much from the discussion or the written materials and may become distracted by their need for activity and exploration. They tend to have a good motor memory and motor coordination. Aside from sensory preferences, we have the global analytic continuum. Analytic thinkers tend toward the linear step-by-step processes of learning. They tend to see finite elements of patterns rather than the whole. They are the tree seers. They are more comfortable in a world of details and hierarchies of information. While the global thinkers lean towards non-linear thought and tend to see the whole pattern rather than particle elements. They are the forest seers, who give attention only to overall structure and sometimes ignore details. Several theories have tied the global analytic continuum to left brain and right brain continuum. In accord with Roger Sperry's model, the left brain dominant individual is portrayed as the linear or analytic, while the right brain person is one who is viewed as global, non-linear, and holistic in thought preferences. Left-brained are described as successive processor who prefers to learn in a step-by-step sequential format, beginning with details leading a conceptual understanding of a skill, while right-brained prefers to learn beginning with the general concept and then going on the specifics. So these are the detailed description or comparison between the left brain and the right brain. When you talk about left brain, this is described as the successive hemispheric style, while the right brain is a simultaneous hemispheric style. Left brain is verbal, responds to word meaning, sequential, processes information linearly from specific to general, responds to logic, plans ahead, recalls people's name, speak with few gestures, punctual, prefers formal study design, and prefers bright lights while studying. For the right brain, they are visual, responds to the tone of voice, they are random, they process information in varied order, they respond to emotion, they are impulsive, they recall people's faces, gestures when speaking, less punctual, and prefers sound, music background while studying, and lastly, prefers frequent mobility while studying. Experiential Learning Theory. David Kolb published his learning style model in 1984, from which he developed his learning style inventory. Kolb's experiential learning theory works on two levels, a four-stage cycle of learning and four separate learning styles. Much of Kolb's theory is concerned with the learning internal cognitive processes. Kolb's experiential learning style theory is typically represented by a four-stage learning cycle in which the learner touches all the bases. The four-stage learning cycle are concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. Concrete experience. The learner encounters as concrete experience. This might be a new experience or situation or a reinterpretation of existing experience in the light of new concept. Reflective observation of the new experience. The learner reflects on the new experience in the light of their existing knowledge. Of particular importance are any inconsistencies between experience and understanding. Abstract conceptualization. These are reflection gives rise to a new idea or a modification of an existing abstract concept. The person has learned from their experience. 4. Active experimentation. The newly created or modified concepts gives rise to experimentation. The learner applies their idea to the world around them to see what happens. The four learning styles: diverging, assimilating, converging, and accommodating. Diverging. These people are able to look at things from different perspectives. They are sensitive. They prefer to watch rather than do, tending to gather information and use imagination to solve problems. They are best at viewing concrete situations from several different viewpoints. Kolb called this learning style as diverging because these people perform better in situations that require ideas generation, for example, brainstorming. People with diverging learning style have broad cultural interests and like to gather information. They are interested in people, tend to be imaginative and emotional, and tend to be strong in the arts. People with a diverging style prefer to work in groups, to listen with an open mind, and to receive personal feedback. Assimilating. The assimilating learning preference involves a concise, logical approach. Ideas and concepts are most important than people. These people require good, clear explanation rather than a practical opportunity. They excel at understanding wide-ranging information and organizing it in a clear, logical format. People with an assimilating learning style are less focused on people and more interested in ideas and abstract concepts. People with this style are more attracted to logically sound theories than approaches based on practical value. This learning style is important for effectiveness in information and science careers. In formal learning situations, people with this style prefer readings, lectures, exploring analytical models, and having time to think things through. Converging. People with converging learning style can solve problems and will use their learning to find solutions to particular issues. They prefer technical tasks and are less concerned with people and interpersonal aspects. People with converging learning style are best at finding practical uses for ideas and theories. They can solve problems and make decisions by finding solutions to questions and problems. People with converging learning styles are more attracted to technical tasks and problems than social or interpersonal issues. A converging learning style enables specialists in technology abilities. They like to experiment with new ideas, to simulate, and to work with practical applications. Lastly, the accommodating learning style, or the hands-on. It relies on intuition rather than logic. These people use other people's analysis and prefer to take a practical, experiential approach. They are attracted to new challenges and experiences and to carrying out plans. They commonly act on gut instinct rather than logical analysis. People with an accommodating learning style will tend to rely on others for information, then carry out their own analysis. This learning style is prevalent within the general population. Both Kolb's learning stages and cycle could be used by teachers to critically evaluate the learning provision typically available to students and to develop more appropriate learning opportunities. Educators should ensure that activities are designed and carried out in ways that offer each learner the chance to engage in the manner that suits them best. Individuals can be helped to learn more effectively by identification of their lesser preferred learning styles and the strengthening of these through the application of the experiential learning cycle. Ideally, activities and materials should be developed in ways that draw on abilities from each stage of the experiential learning cycle and take the students through the whole process in sequence. Multiple intelligences. In 1983, Howard Gardner presented his concept about intelligence through his book, Frames of Mind. He stated that any individual has different capabilities and tendencies in different areas and that each has several types of intelligence that are intermingled in different ways. Through this theory, there were profound innovations and new ways and methods of lesson presentations. At present, teachers are challenged and enjoined to provide a student-centered classroom emboldened by multiple intelligences-inspired instructions. Gardner's 9 multiple intelligences: verbal linguistic or word smart, logical mathematical number smart, visual spatial picture smart, musical rhythmic music smart, bodily kinesthetic, body smart, intrapersonal, self-smart, interpersonal, people smart, naturalistic, nature smart, and lastly, existential, life smart. Gardner mentioned 2 important advantages of multiple intelligence in education. First, the MI theory gives the opportunity to plan education program to make the students desire for a certain area. If they want to become an engineer, musician, a doctor, and so on. Second, it enables teachers to reach more students who are trying to learn different disciplines and theories. Learning would be realized much easily on the condition that students are trained by using these intelligence fields. One example is the implementation of intelligence circle inside the classroom. A lesson in science about ecosystem can be presented through a video to cater the visual, spatial, musical, rhythmic, and verbal linguistic intelligent people. A logical, mathematical intelligent group of learners can be asked to present data and explain in logical flow the concept presented in the video. However, the bodily kinesthetic students might also be asked to give a dance presentation of the current situation about the ecosystem. For the interpersonal and existentialist, they will be the one to present a reflection about the video. The visual spatial will also be asked to come up with a drawing about the ecosystem, while the verbal linguistic will present an explanation about the drawing. The interpersonal student's assignment is to interview people in the community on how they could protect the ecosystem. Through this thematic presentation of the lesson with the aid of multiple intelligences, the learner's needs, interests, and intelligences will be satisfied. thus promoting a more conducive and learner-centered learning environment. Learners with exceptionalities. One significant factor that highlights individual differences and diversity in learning is the presence of exceptionalities. We commonly refer to the learners with exceptionalities as persons who are different in some way from the normal or average. The term exceptional learners include those with special needs related to cognitive abilities, behavior, social functioning, physical and sensory impairments, emotional disturbances, and giftedness. What is the difference between handicap and disability? A disability is a measurable impairment or limitations that interferes with a person's ability. For example, ability to walk, lift, hear, or learn. It may refer to a physical, sensory, or mental coordination. The word disability has become the more accepted term, having replaced the word handicap in federal laws in the U.S., one of which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA. IDEA is the law that provides comprehensive service and support for exceptional learners. Our very own 1987 Philippine Constitution in Article 14, Section 2 uses the word disabled in paragraph 5 to provide adult citizens, the disabled, and out-of-school youth with training. Handicap does not have the same meaning with disability. A handicap is a disadvantage that occurs as a result of disability or impairment. The degree of disadvantage is often dependent on the adjustment made by both the person and his environment. Therefore, the extent to which a disability handicaps an individual can vary greatly. What are the categories of exceptionalities? There are different ways of presenting categories of exceptionalities. We have the specific cognitive or academic difficulties, we have the physical disabilities and health impairments, and we have this people-first language. On the specific cognitive or academic difficulties, we have the learning disabilities, involves difficulties in specific cognitive processes like perception, language, memory, or metacognition that are not due to other disabilities like mental retardation, emotional or behavioral disorders, and sensory impairments. Examples are dyslexia, dyscalculia, or dysgraphia. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is another type of academic difficulty. It is manifested of either difficulty in focusing and maintaining attention or recurrent hyperactive and impulsive behavior. Another one is speech and communication disorder. This is the difficulty in spoken language, including voice disorders, inability to produce the sound correctly, stuttering, difficulty in spoken language comprehension that significantly hamper classroom performances. Aside from specific cognitive, we have the social, emotional, and behavioral difficulties. Examples are autism, a condition manifested by different levels of impaired social interaction and communication, repetitive behaviors, and limited interest. Individuals with autism usually have an intense need for a routine and predictable environment. Mental retardation, it refers to significant sub-average intelligence and deficits in adaptive behavior. There is a difficulty in managing activities of daily living and in conducting themselves appropriately in social situations. Lastly, we have the emotional or conduct disorders. This involves the presence of emotional states like depression and aggression over a considerable amount of time that they notably disturb learning and performance in school. For the physical disabilities and health impairments, this involves physical or medical conditions and usually are long-term. They have limited energy and strength, reduced mental alertness, and limited or little muscle control. We also have severe and multiple disabilities. This refers to the presence of two or more different types of disability, at times at a profound level. The combination of disabilities makes it necessary to make specific adaptations and have more specialized educational programs. We also have sensory impairments. We have the visual and the hearing impairments. Aside from disabilities and impairments, we also have this giftedness. This involves a significantly high level of cognitive development and there is unusually high ability or aptitude in one or more of these aspects: intellectual ability, aptitude in academic subject, creativity, visual or performing arts, or leadership. Giftedness is somehow comparable with the people with high IQs. Some of them are shown in the slide presented. People first language. What is people first language? Just as the term would imply, this language involves putting the person first, not the disability. So there are some suggestions for referring to those people with disabilities. First, avoid generic labels. People with mental retardation is preferable to the mentally retarded. Another one, emphasize abilities, not limitation. Example, uses a wheelchair is preferable to confined to a wheelchair. Another one, avoid euphemisms such as physically challenged, which are regarded as condescending, and avoid the real issues that result from disability. And lastly, avoid implying illness or suffering. Had polio is preferable to is a polio victim, and has multiple sclerosis is preferable to suffers from multiple sclerosis. Using people first language and applying the guidelines above will remind you to have a more respectful and accepting attitude toward learners with exceptionalities. Beginning with the right attitude, one of compassion, will make you a more effective teacher, one with the hand and the heart who can facilitate their learning and adjustment.